The call to action. Blood and insectoid guts splashed across the view screen of the ESS Valiant. Captain Zack Ryder grimly watched the Zorgon slaughter Oran civilians in a surprise attack on their defenseless homeworld. The other galactic species called humans bloodthirsty warmongers, but as the only ones willing to stop this massacre, humans would just have to own that title with pride. Earth Command, the Orans need our help. Request permission to engage, Zack barked over comms. Negative, Captain. We're not getting involved. Maintain position, his superior replied coldly. Zack slammed a fist on the console. Memories of the Kilak invasion of Earth decades ago flashed through his mind. The horrific losses, the brutal retaliation that saved humanity, but earned them a reputation as unpredictable aggressors. To hell with our orders, Zack growled to his crew of 150. Set course for Oria. Maximum thrust. The Valiant's engines roared to life. They had to reach the Orans in time. Zack would prove humans could be a force for good in the galaxy or die trying. The Valiant hurtled into warp, charging toward the distant conflict, toward honor. A chance for humans to show they were more than the bloodthirsty savages the other species believed them to be. Into the fray. The view of Oria from orbit was gut-wrenching. Zack's eyes widened as he took in the extent of the destruction. Smoke billowed from countless fires that raged across the planet's surface. Craters pockmarked the once vibrant cities, now reduced to piles of twisted metal and rubble. The Zorgon fleet, a swarm of menacing ships, hung in low orbit like a cloud of locusts. My God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Olivia Chen, Zack's second in command. We're too late. Zack clenched his jaw. No, there have to be survivors. We're going to save as many as we can. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the bridge. Captain, incoming fighters, shouted Ensign Michael Petro from the tactical station. A squadron of Zorgon fighters screamed toward the Valiant, their plasma cannons glowing with deadly intent. Zack snapped into action. Evasive maneuvers. Petro, target those bastards and fire at will. The Valiant's engines flared as the ship banked hard to starboard. The human vessel's advanced point defense lasers swiveled and locked onto the approaching fighters. Rapid-fire bursts of energy lanced out, slicing through the Zorgon ships like a hot knife through butter. The fighters exploded in brilliant fireballs, their wreckage tumbling into the void. The rescue mission. Zack wasted no time. Comms, open a channel to the Oran leadership. The view screen flickered, and the face of a weary Oran appeared. High Chancellor Zelter's insectoid features were marred by soot and blood. Who are you? He demanded, his mandibles clicking with suspicion. I'm Captain Zack Ryder of the Earth ship Valiant. We're here to help. We can evacuate your people, get them to safety. Zelter's compound eyes narrowed. Why should we trust you, human? Your kind are known as warmongers. Zack leaned forward, his voice earnest. Chancellor, I know our reputation, but right now, we're the only ones who can save your people. Please, let us help. The Oran leader hesitated, his antenna twitching. Another explosion rocked his location, and screams echoed in the background. Zelter's shoulders slumped in defeat. Very well, Captain. We have no choice. We will gather our survivors at these coordinates. Zack nodded grimly. We'll be there. Valiant out. As the view screen went blank, Zack turned to his crew. Prep the dropships and alert the Marines. We're going in, holding the line. Minutes later, Zack led a team of heavily armed Marines into the heart of the devastation. The Valiant hovered overhead, its weapons primed to provide air support. The humans quickly established a defensive perimeter around the evacuation site, where terrified Orans huddled in the ruins. Plasma fire rained down from above as the Zorgons launched another wave of attacks. Zack ducked behind a shattered wall, his pulse rifle thrumming in his hands. Hold the line. He shouted over the din of battle. We've got to buy time for the civilians. The Marines and Oran warriors fought side by side, their weapons blazing as they repelled the relentless Zorgon assault. Zack moved among his troops, his leadership and tactical skills shining through as he directed the defense. An Oran warrior fell, struck by a plasma bolt. Zack rushed to his side and dragged him to cover, applying pressure to the wound. The warrior looked up at him, surprise and gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, human," he rasped. Zack clasped the Oran's shoulder. "We're in this together, my friend. We'll get your people out of here." As the battle raged on, the humans and Orans forged an unlikely bond, united in their desperate fight for survival. Zack's bravery and selflessness did not go unnoticed, and the Oran warriors began to see the humans in a new light. The last stand. The evacuation proceeded slowly but steadily, drop ships ferrying the wounded and civilians to the safety of the Valiant. Zack and his Marines held the line, their determination and skill keeping the Zorgans at bay. Suddenly, a massive shadow loomed over the battlefield. Zack looked up, his eyes widening in horror as a colossal Zorgan mothership descended from the clouds. The behemoth dwarfed the Valiant, its hull bristling with weapons and launch bays. "Captain, we've got incoming." Olivia's voice crackled over the comms. Hundreds of fighters and troop transports launching from the mothership. Zack gritted his teeth. The Valiant was heavily outgunned, and he knew they wouldn't be able to hold out much longer against the overwhelming force. His mind raced, searching for a solution. Then a desperate idea formed. "Olivia, plot a collision course with the mothership," Zack ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We're going to ram it." There was a moment of stunned silence over the comms. "Sir, are you sure?" Olivia asked, her voice laced with concern. "It's our only chance," Zack replied grimly. "We have to disable its main weapons and buy time for the remaining Orans to escape." "Understood, Captain. Plotting course now." The Valiant's engines roared as the ship accelerated toward the Zorgan mothership. Zack braced himself, his hands gripping the armrests of his command chair. The bridge crew worked frantically, their faces tense with concentration. The mothership grew larger in the view screen, its hull filling the screen. Zack held his breath, watching as the distance closed rapidly. The Valiant shuddered as Zorgan weapons fire impacted its shields, alarms blaring throughout the ship. With a deafening crash, the Valiant slammed into the mothership's hull, metal screeching against metal as the two behemoths collided. Consoles exploded on the bridge, showering the crew with sparks. Zack was thrown from his chair, his head slamming against a bulkhead. Pain exploded behind his eyes, and he tasted blood in his mouth. Struggling to his feet, Zack surveyed the damage. The Valiant had taken heavy damage, but the gamble had paid off. The mothership's main weapons were disabled, its hull breached in several places. "Olivia, status report," Zack croaked, wiping blood from his brow. "We're still operational, Captain, but barely," Olivia replied, her face streaked with soot. "The mothership's main weapons are offline, but it's launching more troops." Zack nodded, his mind already formulating a new plan. "Prep a boarding party. We're going to sabotage the mothership's reactor." Sacrifice and survival. Minutes later, Zack led a team of Marines through the gaping hole in the mothership's hull. The interior was a maze of dark corridors and pulsing conduits, the air thick with the stench of ozone and burnt circuitry. As they made their way deeper into the ship, Zorgan soldiers appeared from every direction, their weapons spitting plasma. Zack and his team fought back, their pulse rifles lighting up the gloom with each burst of fire. The confined spaces of the mothership turned the battle into a brutal close-quarters firefight, with no room for error or retreat. Zack pressed forward, his body aching from the collision and the exertion of combat. They had to reach the reactor, no matter the cost. The fate of the Orans depended on it. Finally, they'd reached the reactor room, a cavernous chamber filled with pulsing energy conduits and humming machinery. Zack and his team quickly set to work, planting explosives at key structural points. Sweat poured down Zack's face as he armed the charges, his fingers flying over the detonator keypad. Just as they were about to make their escape, a fresh wave of Zorgan soldiers poured into the room, cutting off their exit. Plasma bolts filled the air, and several of Zack's Marines fell, their armor smoking from the deadly impacts. Zack ducked behind a console, his heart pounding in his chest. They were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned. He looked down at the detonator in his hand, the realization of what he had to do settling over him like a cold weight. "Olivia, get the team back to the Valiant," Zack ordered over the comms, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I'll stay behind and detonate the charges manually." "Captain, no," Olivia protested, her voice thick with emotion. "We're not leaving you behind." "That's an order, Commander," Zack replied firmly. "The Orans need you. Get our people out of here." There was a moment of heavy silence, broken only by the sounds of battle. Then, reluctantly, Olivia acknowledged, "Aye, Captain. It's been an honor serving with you." Zack smiled grimly, his grip tightening on the detonator. "The honor was mine. Now go before it's too late." As his team fought their way back to the breach in the hull, Zack provided covering fire, his pulse rifle blazing. He watched as they disappeared into the darkness, a sense of calm settling over him. He had done his duty, and now it was time to finish the job. With a final glance at the timer on the detonator, Zack took a deep breath and pressed the button. The world erupted in a blinding flash of light and heat, and everything went black. A legacy of hope. A blinding flash of light erupted from the Zorgan mothership's core, followed by a deafening boom that shook the very fabric of space. The massive vessel shuddered and convulsed as secondary explosions tore through its hull, ripping it apart from the inside out. Debris and shrapnel flew in every direction, slamming into the nearby Zorgan ships and causing a chain reaction of destruction. On the bridge of the Valiant, the crew watched in awe as the mothership disintegrated before their eyes. Olivia, her face streaked with tears, couldn't tear her gaze away from the expanding fireball that had once been the Zorgan flagship. "He did it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "The captain saved us all." The Zorgan fleet, thrown into disarray by the sudden loss of their command ship, began to retreat in a disorganized fashion. The remaining Oran ships seized the opportunity, joining forces with the Valiant to drive the invaders back. The once hopeless battle had turned in their favor, and the Allies pressed their advantage, determined to end the Zorgan threat once and for all. As the last of the Zorgan ships fled the system, a sense of relief and exhaustion swept through the Valiant's crew. They had accomplished the impossible, but at a terrible cost. The ship was badly damaged, and many of their comrades had fallen in the battle. Over the next several hours, the Valiant and the Oran ships worked tirelessly to evacuate the remaining civilians from the ruined surface of Aurea. Thousands of Orans, shell-shocked and wounded, were transported to the safety of the ship's cargo base. Many wept openly, mourning the loss of their loved ones and their homes, but there was also a sense of gratitude toward their human saviors. As the last of the survivors were brought aboard, Olivia received a message from a nearby friendly world offering to take in the Oran refugees. With a heavy heart, she gave the order to set course for the planet, knowing that the Orans would need time to heal and rebuild. News of the battle spread quickly throughout the galaxy, and the story of the human selfless actions soon became the talk of every spaceport and trading post. The once feared warmongers were now seen in a new light, as compassionate allies who were willing to sacrifice everything to protect the innocent. Earth Command, while publicly denouncing Zack's disobedience, privately acknowledged the importance of his actions in fostering better relations with other species. They knew that the Valiant's crew had done more for human diplomacy in a single day than decades of negotiations could ever achieve. As the Valiant limped towards the friendly world, a miracle occurred. A battered escape pod, barely functional, was detected drifting among the debris of the Zorgan mothership. When the pod was brought aboard, the crew was shocked to find a badly injured but alive Captain Zack Ryder inside. Zack's survival was hailed as a testament to human resilience and bravery, and he quickly became a symbol of hope for the Oran people. As he recovered from his wounds, delegations from across the galaxy arrived to pay their respects and offer their support in the fight against the Zorgans. Weeks later, as the Oran refugees began to settle into their new home, Zack and his crew were invited to attend a ceremony in their honor. The Oran High Chancellor Zelter stood before a crowd of thousands, his voice filled with emotion as he spoke of the humans' bravery and sacrifice. In our darkest hour, when all hope seemed lost, the humans stood by our side, Zelter declared, his words carried across the galaxy by countless news feeds. They fought not for glory or conquest, but for the simple belief that all life is precious and worth defending. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid. As Zelter presented Zack and his crew with the highest Oran honor, a gleaming medallion that symbolized the unbreakable bond between their peoples, the crowd erupted in cheers. The sound was a testament to the power of compassion and the indomitable spirit of those who fight for what is right. Zack, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, accepted the honor with humility and grace. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he also knew that the Valiant and her crew would be there to light the way, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that desperately needed it. The ceremony was a grand affair, with thousands of Orans and representatives from across the galaxy gathered to honor the heroes of the Valiant. The stage was set, and the air was filled with a sense of hope and unity. Zelter stood at the podium, his voice filled with emotion as he spoke of the sacrifices made by the humans and the bond that had been forged between their peoples. Zack and his crew stood to the side, their chests swelling with pride as they listened to the High Chancellor's words. They had been through hell and back, but in that moment, it all seemed worth it. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the crowd. A figure clad in the distinctive armor of a Zorgan assassin pushed through the throng of people, a weapon clutched in its clawed hand. The assassin raised the weapon, aiming it directly at Zelter's head. Time seemed to slow down as Zack realized what was happening. Without hesitation, he leaped forward, throwing himself between the assassin and the High Chancellor. The weapon discharged with a blinding flash, and Zack felt a searing pain tear through his chest. Chaos erupted as the crowd scattered, screams filling the air. Olivia and the rest of the crew surged forward, their weapons drawn, but the assassin was already being subdued by the Oran guards. Zack collapsed to the ground, his blood pooling beneath him. Zelter knelt beside him, cradling the human's head in his lap. "Why?" the High Chancellor asked, his voice choked with emotion. "Why would you do this?" Zack coughed, a trickle of blood running from the corner of his mouth. "Because it was the right thing to do," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I wanted to show that humans are more than just warriors. We're capable of compassion, of self-sacrifice." Tears welled in Zelter's eyes as he looked down at the dying human. "You have shown us that and more, my friend. Your actions will never be forgotten." Zack smiled weakly, his vision beginning to blur. "I hope that this will help bridge the gap between our peoples," he said, his words coming in short gasps. "I hope that we can build a future together, one where we stand united against the darkness." Olivia and the others gathered around their fallen captain, their faces etched with grief. They had lost so much, but they knew that Zack's sacrifice would not be in vain. As Zack's eyes drifted closed, his final thoughts were of the Orans, of the countless lives that had been saved because of his actions. He had made a difference, and that was all that mattered. The news of Zack's death spread quickly, and the galaxy mourned the loss of a true hero. A memorial service was held, attended by representatives from every corner of the known universe. They came to pay their respects, to honor the man who had given his life for the sake of peace.